One last dogfight before everything went silent. It is the early hours of August 15, 1945, the final day of World War II. High above the Pacific, Lieutenant Howard "Howdy" Harrison leads 6 American F-6F Hellcats toward the Tokyo region on a fighter sweep mission. Their destination is at Sugi Airfield, a strategic base guarded by Japanese fighters waiting for any incoming threat. As the formation cuts through the sky, Harrison spots the airfield in the distance. His voice comes through the radio, calm but focused, ordering his pilots to prepare their HVAR rockets. The Hellcats tighten formation and begin their descent, engines roaring as they dive toward their target. Harrison's finger hovers over the trigger, the ground rushing closer with every passing second. The moment feels like a decisive one last strike in a long and brutal war. But just as the attack is about to begin, a sudden transmission breaks through the tension. The order is clear and unbelievable. Return to base immediately. The war is over. For a brief second, silence fills the cockpit. Then the radio erupts with excitement. Cheers echo across the sky as the pilots pull their aircraft up, abandoning the attack. Victory rolls and sharp loops replace combat maneuvers as relief and celebration take over. The war that defined their lives has finally ended, and for these pilots, it feels like they're flying into a new world. As the American fighters turn back, celebrating their survival and victory, they fail to notice danger forming behind them. From a distance, Japanese Navy Lieutenant Yutaka Morioka watches the scene unfold. At first, confusion grips him as he sees the Americans breaking formation and celebrating instead of attacking. A chilling realization slowly sets in, confirmed moments later by a transmission ordering all forces to return. The Emperor has commanded an end to the fighting. Japan has surrendered. For many, this signals the end of suffering, but for Morioka, it feels like humiliation carved deep into his soul. The memory of battles lost and the pain of his missing hand, taken in earlier combat, burns inside him. Around him, some pilots obey the command and begin to turn back, accepting the war's end. But Morioka cannot. This moment feels like his final chance to reclaim honor for his nation. With a sudden decision, he pushes his aircraft into a steep dive toward the unaware American fighter. His voice cuts through the air with a final cry of loyalty as his unit follows him. What unfolds next is not a planned battle, but a sudden and deadly ambush, swift, precise, and silent, like a strike from an unseen predator. A sudden warning cuts through the air. Enemy fighters diving fast from above. Harrison glances over his shoulder and instantly understands the danger. Without hesitation, he orders his squadron to drop their external tanks and rockets. The celebration is over. The ceasefire has been broken. The Japanese fighters hold a clear advantage, descending from higher altitude with deadly intent. Harrison pushes his throttle forward and turns his aircraft sharply, leading his squadron upward to meet the attack head-on. He knows the enemy planes carry powerful cannons capable of tearing through anything in seconds, but he also knows their weakness. Their armor cannot withstand sustained fire. If his pilots can hold formation and unleash their machine guns at the right moment, they still have a chance. The distance between both sides closes rapidly, the sky shrinking into a single point of collision. Then, in an instant, both formations open fire. Streams of bullets tear through the air as the aircraft slice past each other at terrifying speed. For a split second, Harrison sees the face of his enemy before everything breaks apart into chaos. He quickly orders his pilots to separate into pairs, turning the fight into smaller duels. As he maneuvers through the sky with his wingman, enemy fire flashes past them, forcing Harrison into a sharp dive to escape the incoming attack. One of the Japanese fighters stays locked onto Harrison, pulling him into a tight and deadly spiral through the sky. The two aircraft twist and climb, each pilot searching for the perfect angle to strike. Harrison knows this cannot last forever. One mistake will decide everything. He watches his instruments carefully, waiting for the exact moment to act. Then, with sudden force, he pulls back on the controls, sacrificing speed to climb sharply up. The strain hits instantly, pressing him deep into his seat as his engine struggles under the pressure. The enemy pilot follows, refusing to break away. For a brief moment, Harrison is exposed, crossing directly in front of the enemy's line of fire. Shots flash past his cockpit, dangerously close, but he holds steady. Then, the balance shifts. The Japanese fighter overshoots, slipping beneath him and losing control. Its speed drops, and the aircraft begins to stall, tipping over into a fall. Harrison reacts instantly, pulling his aircraft into position as gravity helps him drop back down. The enemy plane fills his sights. He fires. A stream of bullets tears through the fighter,
igniting its fuel. Flames burst outward as the aircraft flips and falls, trailing thick smoke. As Harrison steadies his breathing and scans the sky again, a desperate call breaks through. His young wingman is in trouble, struggling to escape an enemy fighter locked tightly behind him. Harrison wastes no time. The moment he hears his wingman's distress, he pushes his throttle forward and dives straight back into the chaos. His aircraft cuts through the sky with speed and precision as he targets the enemy fighter chasing his man. The Japanese pilot remains focused on his prey, completely unaware of the danger approaching from above. Harrison steadied his aim, timing his move perfectly before pulling the trigger. A burst of machine gun fire rips through the air, striking the enemy plane with devastating force. Within seconds, the aircraft erupts, breaking apart in a fiery explosion that scatters debris across the sky.
The immediate threat is gone. Over the radio, his wingman's voice returns, filled with relief. Harrison keeps his response brief, reminding him to stay alert because the battle is far from over. Across the sky, the fight continues to unfold. Two of his pilots find themselves outnumbered, facing multiple enemy fighters closing in fast. Without hesitation, they engage. Gunfire streaks through the air as one of the enemy planes takes heavy damage, its structure failing as it spirals downward. Another attacker tries to retaliate, but misses, giving just enough time for a counterattack. The Americans press their advantage, coordinating their movements carefully, and within moments, another enemy aircraft is torn apart. But even as victories come, there's no time to celebrate. The battle remains relentless, shifting constantly with every passing second. Elsewhere in the sky, another pair of American pilots struggles to survive under intense pressure. Their aircraft are under heavy fire, taking repeated hits as an enemy fighter stays locked onto them with deadly focus. Inside the attacking plane, the Japanese pilot remains calm and precise, maintaining position and firing steadily. One of the American aircraft takes critical damage and bursts into flame, falling away as its pilot loses control. The surviving pilot now faces the enemy alone, his aircraft shaking under continuous impact. Just as the situation becomes desperate, help arrives. Another pair of American fighters dives into the fight, closing in behind the attacker. At the right moment, they open fire, their bullets striking the enemy plane and sending it spiraling down toward the earth. The immediate threat is eliminated, but the damage has already been done. The surviving pilot's aircraft is barely holding together, his engine struggling, wings torn, and controls failing. He is told to escape the battle and head toward the open sea while cover is provided. He tries to maintain control, fighting against failing systems as warning signals flash around him, but the damage is too severe. His aircraft begins to lose altitude rapidly. With no other choice, he ejects. Moments later, his parachute opens and he descends toward the ocean below, barely escaping with his life. The battle refuses to slow down. A new wave of enemy fighters appears ahead, while more close in from behind, trapping the Americans between them. The sky turns into a deadly corridor with no clear escape. Two of the pilots push their aircraft upward, disappearing into thick clouds in an attempt to break contact. This ability drops instantly, and within seconds, they lose sight of each other. One of them calls out, knowing the odds are against them, hoping they might meet again if they survive. Elsewhere, Harrison and his wingman try to pull away from the fight, but danger finds them again. Out of the sky, Morioka suddenly appears, leading a perfectly timed ambush. His wingman follows closely, waiting for the right moment to strike. The attack is immediate and overwhelming. Harrison reacts as fast as he can, pulling hard on the controls, but it is already too late. Heavy cannon fire tears into his aircraft, shaking it violently. He realizes the damage is critical and orders his wingman to break away and save himself. But instead of retreating, his wingman turns back toward the attackers, choosing to fight. Fires, but his shots miss as Morioka stays locked onto Harrison. Another burst of cannon fire follows, and this time it strikes with devastating precision. Harrison's aircraft explodes, vanishing into smoke and falling debris within seconds. The loss hits instantly. Fueled by anger, the young pilot dives after Morioka, locking onto him and firing in retaliation. His bullets strike the enemy aircraft, but the experienced pilot manages to evade the attack. In his focus on revenge, the young pilot forgets the danger behind him. Morioka's wingman seizes the opportunity, diving in from above and opening fire. The attack is sudden and brutal. Rounds tear through the aircraft, sending fragments flying through the cockpit. Flames begin to spread as control is lost. Injured but determined to survive, the pilot forces open the canopy and jumps. His parachute deploys as he falls away, leaving behind the burning wreck of his aircraft. Moments later, he loses consciousness before reaching the ground. Far above, the Japanese fighters pull away, leaving the battlefield behind as uncertainty awaits them at home. In another part of the sky, one of the surviving American pilots emerges from the clouds, scanning desperately for any sign of his squadron. There is no response. only silence. With no other option, he sets a course back toward his carrier. A faint signal reaches him, confirming that at least one more pilot is still alive. When he finally lands, the emptiness on the deck tells a story before anyone speaks. Then, in the distance, another damaged aircraft appears and manages to land. The two survivors stand together, realizing they are the only ones left. On that very day, as peace was declared and the war came to an end, pilots on both sides were lost in what would become the final dogfight of World War II, a battle fought in the last moments before everything went silent.
Subscribe for more history.